Can government-issued digital currencies solve the financial inclusion issues?
We're back with another AIBC Summit panel discussion, and today we'll be taking a look if can government digital currencies actually solve the issue of financial inclusion. We have a great set of guests today. We have Michelle joining us, we have Alexander, and we also have Frank. So it's great to have you all join me on the line. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Great to have you all. Now, this is a very interesting time to have this discussion. We are seeing that government introduced digital currencies. We're even seeing a digital euro might be on the cards as of very recent news this November. So what a better time to be having this discussion. And I'd love to start just with you, Michelle, and just get your impressions of what we have seen so far from these digital government-backed digital currencies and where you think they're going to go moving forward.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jess. And good morning, good afternoon, everyone. It's fantastic to be here. I think very, very exciting times. Of course, we've had the challenges with COVID, and even with COVID, I think, the future of money is going to look very, very different. I think certainly we're seeing a very big shift in terms of even structuring monetary policy as a whole. So a lot of governments are very, very keen in exploring, what the future of money looks like. And I think that's where you have the realm of digital currencies. Certainly, I think, we've had quite a lot of progress in terms of countries actually exploring digital currencies. We've had a few that have launched. I think Bahamas is one of the countries that has looked to actually launch a CBDC. So very, very exciting times. But I think in many of the countries, the focus is very much around exploration and really trying to understand what, the pros and cons are for central bank digital currencies. I think certainly we're going to see a whole range of countries start to introduce central bank digital currencies, particularly more so around, in the West. Certainly in emerging developing countries, I think, again, there is an appetite. In Africa, we are starting to have that bigger conversation about, okay, why should we introduce CBDC if we should? And what does that structure look like? What are the implications for things like financial inclusion? So definitely a very exciting space, and there's a lot of work I think that still needs to be done to progress it.
And you've made some fantastic points there where it comes to different regions benefiting differently from this financial inclusion issue and also a digital-backed currency. So we'll get to that a little bit later in the panel discussion, but thank you so much for your insights there. Now, Alexander, I'd love to jump to you now and just ask you, because you do have some experience when it comes to actually working with regions through their digital currency kind of push forward. What kind of examples can you give of what we've seen so far, some economies that have already maybe integrated something along these lines, and what kind of feedback you've had?
Thank you very much. It's exciting time to talk about CBDC. When we spoke last year, I projected that CBDC would be, the year of CBDC would be 2020, but due to the COVID, I think it would be 2021. So again, yes, we have as a CBDC platform creators, we have a couple of pilots. And why the central bank are actually starving to get the digital currency? First of all, due to the COVID, the paper currencies also transmit the disease. So they would like to eliminate this risk, first of all. Then it's actually almost costless medium of exchange. And of course, if you'd like to deliver any amount of paper cash to the another part of your country, it requires a lot of resources, it costs you a lot, not only to print the cash, but to deliver the cash, to collect the cash. So when you use CBDC, you can manage this process almost free of charge. And again, on top of that, you can actually add the simple script program to program the currency to create whatever, halal money, to create the subsidies, to create the special currency which might be spent only for education purposes. So from this perspective, the pros for digital currencies are almost endless. So from my perspective, all those pilots will end up next year into 3 or 4 or probably even 5 to 6 countries who will definitely switch to CBDC and as a launch project together with a cash currency, of course, they will work in parallel for several years.
So very bullish from you there, Alexander. And as you said, the pros are endless. So Frank, I'd love to turn to you now and just ask, what are some of the cons that we might see before we launch a little bit further into the discussion from a broader perspective? Is there any that you can identify maybe as the counter argument to anything that Alexander's just mentioned?
Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending where you are. Yeah, there definitely are concerns, and it's good that you actually mentioned this. I recently looked through the questionnaire that was sent out by the European Central Bank about the digital euro, which they launched a few days ago. I wrote about it on LinkedIn somewhere. It's a very long questionnaire, it's very thorough, but you can definitely read into it that they are already looking towards a certain direction with this currency. And the kind of questioning, I wouldn't call it loaded, but they are definitely, the biggest concern that I can see is a digital currency issued by a central bank will never have privacy as its main concern. That's just because it's run by government. And we have seen recently, just after the terror attacks in Austria now, straight away there are loud cries again in the EU to abolish end-to-end encryption in things like, Signal and WhatsApp. So the idea that a central bank could possibly back and support and actually create a digital currency that values the privacy of its user is ludicrous. They would never ever do that. They're asking the questionnaire actually, I've got it in front of me, I just pulled it up to tell you. So they're asking, what would you prefer as a user? A digital euro focused on privacy and the protection of personal data, or a digital euro with broader potential for additional services, allowing innovative features and other benefits for citizens and businesses? That's a loaded question. They want you, do you want privacy or do you want all these other services which we will snoop on you? So my biggest concern, as much as there is an amazing use case for digital currencies, for cryptocurrencies. I mean, I started the Bitcoin business here. I believe in digital currencies. My biggest concern, if any government gets near it, is privacy, and that it will be used in ways that you don't want it to be used as a user, and that they will not tell you about. They will use it to spy on you. So privacy is definitely, the potential for it to be abused in the privacy sector is definitely my biggest concern and the biggest con.
Very interesting points there. Now, if we focus on this a little bit and a little bit more detail, because the positive of financial inclusion is obviously the focus of the panel today, and I'd like to start with you now, Michelle, and just ask you, when it comes to solving the issue there, we've seen that Christine Lagarde has said that the digital euro wouldn't be a replacement for cash, but if we look to different regions actually where there isn't even much of a cash-based economy, and there might be different regions, or a very unbanked economy, if we look at continents like Africa, what are the benefits there of a digital currency, and how would that different and really further benefit people that are really just trying to make a living?
Yes, no, fantastic question. I think, when we look at CBDC, sometimes everybody kind of puts it in a big pot. And I think the implications for CBDC in different countries, even at national level, even when you look at Africa as a continent, Africa has over, 50 countries, 55 countries. So you have to look at it almost at a national level, and the implications at national level for these countries. So certainly when we're talking about financial inclusion here and actually getting the 1.7 billion people who don't have access to a bank account and have no access to any financial stability within their spheres, then we get very excited about things like central bank digital currencies, because it provides that opportunity to bring the unbanked back into the financial system. So it goes beyond just creating financial stability for a certain set or category of people, but it starts to bring in others who have not actually been had the opportunity to have that financial stability or that access to the financial economic system. So in that respect, I think it's very, very key, that whatever kind of central bank digital currency is designed with the concept of actually how is that going to impact certain people, especially people who are vulnerable, people who do not have access to their bank account, and in fact don't necessarily need to have access to a bank account in order for them to actually enjoy that financial access because of CBDC. So in that respect, I think it has a good promise. again, it very much depends on the design of that central bank digital currency. Certainly, again, it's not just a case of maybe even looking in Africa, but even here in the UK, where I am at the moment, right? We have moved quite ahead in terms of using, either our credit cards most of the time and less cash. So, but at the same time, within the UK, we have an aging population. So a lot of people are much older, and still love the comfort of having their cash or using their cash if they need to. So what I'm really trying to drive at is actually we have to create choice. If you can create choice for different segments of society, and if that choice includes maybe central bank digital currency as an option, then I think that's a good thing. And as Alexander was saying earlier on, we're going to have this parallel where you will have a little bit of cash, and then you will still have a certain segment of people who are not necessarily 100% comfortable with just jumping into wallets straight away. They still need to have that, if you like, that sort of switching from using their cash into wallets, and remember the older population. So it really kind of depends on the countries, the demographic structures of those countries, and if these people would buy into a central bank digital currency in the first place. But huge opportunity for financial inclusion, I think, especially in emerging markets.
Fantastic, thank you. And Alexander, I would love to turn to you now and just ask, because we are talking, and Michelle made some fantastic points there when it comes to actual financial inclusion, even the fact that would people need a bank account that they already hold to be able to hold a CBDC token or digital euro, as it were. So do you have any more insights when it comes to that? Actually, how is it really taking the next step to have more of a financial broad openness to new demographics and new users?
Yes, of course. But let me add a couple of points to the financial inclusion, as actually it's a subject. I'm pretty sure that due to the digital currency, especially CBDC and the proper design, of course, it will allow the government to actually deliver the cash in form of subsidies directly to the citizens. I mean, eliminating all the agencies, all the bureaucracy, all the processes, so almost instantly and directly to the right hand. And this is a real problem in several quite corrupted countries, as you might expect it. And again, if we will look at this system from helicopter point of view, you will see that in the next couple of years, we will see several countries who will launch their CBDC in one or another form. So in this case, the world will need the platform to actually have like an inter-exchange of all these CBDCs, like transnational financial network, where it would be possible to instantly exchange any kind of CBDCs. So my actually insight that probably the next technologies would be to add interoperability on top of the different CBDCs, because for the current CBDCs project, it would be different technologies. So the connectivity and interoperability of these CBDCs would be the next step to deliver transnational currencies. And I'm expecting that such countries as ASEAN or BRICS or another bloc will issue their form of transnational currency.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. And Frank, I'd like to turn to you now and just ask, because we've seen from countries like Venezuela, when it comes to their introduction of digital currencies that are backed by or enforced by a government, and also more local, such as Dash and Bitcoin, also gaining some momentum to combat the cash inflation issue that we did see in that region. How should central banks then react moving forward when it comes to maybe decentralized digital currencies gaining popularity in a world where they're trying to enforce digital currencies? Is that going to be an issue down the line, you see?
Well, you're already seeing governments trying to make life harder for users of decentralized currencies. You just need to look at Bitcoin. Personally, I think Bitcoin and BTC is pretty much the only digital currency that decentralized currency you should care about. It's already being made a lot harder. There are already laws and rules brought in that you have to know the identity of the sender and the recipient under the usual KYC, AML rules. They all bring all these rules in that obviously go totally against anything in crypto. And they bring that in because they are probably quite rightly, a little concerned about a currency they cannot control. If we remember how Facebook tried to launch Libra and the governments quickly saw how powerful that can be and shut it down in an instant. The government doesn't like competition, basically. So yeah, they will, if they bring in their own currencies, they're going to clamp down on the privacy and the decentralized aspects of the other currencies that already exist. So now, of course, you cannot block things like Bitcoin. It's just impossible. But you can make life a lot harder for users of Bitcoin. And they will do it under the excuse of saying, well, you don't need to use that. We gave you our wonderful currency. Here it is. You can use the digital euro. Why use the dirty Bitcoin? And I think there's a lot of education needed still for the public. For example, when we launched a Bitcoin sportsbook over here, a regulated one in the Isle of Man, the first one actually, our biggest concern was that if we switch this on, all the dirty money and the dark market money and all these things, these horror stories you hear about, oh, this Bitcoin is going to come to us and we're going to get flooded in drug money. And it just wasn't the case. Less than 10% of any Bitcoin out there is actually used for anything, illegitimate that we couldn't use. And we researched this a lot. So honestly, I'm sure if we do some more education with the public and basically stress the point that the fiat money you have in your wallet is more likely to have been used illegitimately than the Bitcoin in your digital wallet, then people will think differently. But I can definitely see central banks sort of not outlawing, but pushing out and making it hard to use any currencies, any digital currencies that they don't approve of. And they will, try and push their own little products. And I'm not saying their products will be bad, and maybe they will be really good. And maybe there is a point for a digital euro and other digital currencies. And I really like what Alexander said. Actually, it's a fascinating thought that we're going to have transnational exchanges for these different currencies. That's a really, there's money to be made there for sure. But yeah, my concern again being, more into Bitcoin and the decentralized side is again that governments will sort of try and push the ones they don't like aside and just to muscle in with their own little coins.
And I think we do have to acknowledge that point as well, that in 2020 alone, we've seen protests in different countries, we've seen government-enforced lockdowns, we've seen internet blackouts as well. So for people that are inquisitive about a central bank-backed digital currency, is there a risk that something this centralized, as opposed to cash, which does have an element of free movement, and obviously we are all in this blockchain and cryptocurrency space, so we are aware of other digital assets as well. Is that the main concern that you three would have? And feel free to answer or give your feedback on just how you view the status of something which was central bank owned as opposed to fully decentralized.
Who wants to go first?
I would say, I would say that CBDC is inevitable. So of course, the digital currency in one or another form will replace the physical currency, the paper currency. And I'm pretty sure that because the central banks are quite conservative, they will never use any decentralized solution. They will try to still centralize. So let's call it transition phase to the global digital currency. But before digital currency, global digital currency, we still have a lot of CBDCs centralized in the central banks because they actually central banks. They cannot use decentralized. But again, it's very exciting to see how the world turned to the digital, and probably we will end up in the truly decentralized global digital currency at the end.
Yes,
I do hope that have a decentralized model, but I can see a future where there will be the centralized, the official money, and you're going to have like the new digital outlaws who use their little decentralized currencies, the freedom-loving, privacy-hugging people like me who would never want a central bank to know how much digital currency I have in my wallet. You're always going to have those people because you cannot switch off Bitcoin. But yeah, I think there will be definitely, like Alex said, it's inevitable that the central banks will push their solutions through.
And Michelle, finally to end on you, please.
Sure. Thanks, Jess. No, some very interesting perspectives there. I think given that I have been very involved with governments a lot, I think I'll give them a little bit of credit here that actually they don't necessarily just want to switch off everybody who's kind of interacting with Bitcoin. It's certainly, I think, governments also want to see a level of stability within the economies, right? So they want to be able to say, okay, if you are operating within the fintech space or you're dealing with Bitcoin, then we want that to be done, in a more secure and regulated manner. I think there's still a big divide between what happens in the Bitcoin sphere and what's happening with government. And because of the level of speed that happens within the Bitcoin space, it's kind of very difficult to manage that, I think, from a government perspective in terms of regulation. So for me personally, what I would really love to see is a little bit of balance and also an opportunity to have, yes, the decentralized world where we can be innovative and do what we need to do as, fintechs around the world. But at the same time, I'd also like to have a level of stability for those people who don't necessarily understand the decentralized world at the moment. And they have government and regulators and central banks have responsibility to ensure that level of stability and security for people. So there's an element of choice that has to come in and an element of balance that has to come in from both ends. It's inevitable that central bank digital currencies are certainly going to be there. So if you choose to ignore what's happening with central bank digital currencies as a country, I think you're going to be left behind. And hence the need for that education as well, not just for the ordinary citizens on what choices have you got, what, money options have you got, but also to regulators and to governments. They have to start to understand actually how do we not necessarily just focus on the centralized elements of money, but how the monetary system is completely changing because as a result of DeFi, as a result of central bank digital currencies, as a result of stable coins, as a result of Bitcoin, there's a lot that's happening, right? And the monetary system as a whole within countries is going to change. And if you're going to ignore that, then I think you're missing the trick. And besides, even if you go fully decentralized, right, there's massive opportunities even for banks or commercial banks and others to innovate and create new products and services. So, it's not a scary world. The Bitcoin world is not that scary, guys. There's a lot that you can actually get out of it.
Completely agree. Fantastic. It was great to hear three very interesting perspectives, and I could have carried on the conversation for much longer, but unfortunately that is all that we have time for. Thank you all so much for giving your insights. I'm sure our viewers watching has learned a lot, so thank you all so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.